Alright, let's talk about something that I think most people have seriously underestimated. Picture this. It's the year 2013. DreamWorks Animation, a studio that, at that point, had already given us Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, and How to Train Your Dragon, walks into theaters with a movie about cavemen. And not just any cavemen story. Not some dry, educational, museum documentary kind of cavemen story. No. This is a wild, explosively colorful, emotionally devastating, surprisingly philosophical story about a prehistoric family that is absolutely, completely, and utterly terrified of everything. And yet somehow, this movie ends up saying more about the human condition, about fear versus curiosity, about the relationship between fathers and daughters, between tradition and progress, than half the prestige dramas that came out that same year. You heard me right. And here's what gets me. The Croods grossed over $587 million at the worldwide box office. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. It spawned a sequel, a television series, and became one of those movies that a generation of kids grew up quoting and loving. And yet, when you bring it up in conversations about great animated films, it almost never gets mentioned in the same breath as Finding Nemo, The Lion King, Spirited Away, or even DreamWorks' own How to Train Your Dragon. And that, my friends, is a crime. Because today, we are going to fix that. We are going to go deep, and I mean deep, into every frame, every character, every thematic layer, every emotional gut punch that this movie delivers with the subtlety of a saber-toothed tiger to the chest. We're going to break down the story scene by scene. We're going to analyze what makes these characters tick, what the filmmakers were really trying to say, and whether or not this film deserves to be considered a genuine animated classic. So buckle up. Get comfortable. Maybe grab a snack, something appropriately prehistoric, like a raw leg of something. Because this is going to be a long one. And trust me, every single minute is going to be worth it. Let's talk about the Croods. Section 2, Movie Overview. The basics. The Croods was released on March 22, 2013, by DreamWorks Animation, distributed by 20th Century Fox. The film was directed by Chris Sanders and Kirk DeMicco. Now, Chris Sanders, that name should ring a bell for anyone who loves animation, because this is the same guy who co-directed Lilo and Stitch for Disney and How to Train Your Dragon for DreamWorks. The man has a gift. A real, undeniable gift for taking what sounds like a simple premise and filling it with genuine emotional weight. Kirk DeMicco, while less of a household name, brought strong structural sensibilities to the project, helping to keep this wild, sprawling story grounded and coherent. The voice cast is absolutely stacked. We've got Nicolas Cage, yes, that Nicolas Cage, voicing Grug, the overprotective caveman patriarch. Emma Stone voices Eep, the teenage daughter who is the beating heart of this entire movie. Ryan Reynolds plays Guy, the charming, inventive, mysterious stranger who shakes the Croods world upside down. Catherine Keener brings warmth and quiet strength to Ugga, the Crood family mother. Cloris Leachman, a legend, an absolute legend, voices Gran, the ancient grandmother who is equal parts terrifying and hilarious. Clark Duke voices Thunk, the lovably dim-witted son. And the always brilliant Randy Tom served as the sound designer, while Alan Silvestri, the composer behind Forrest Gump, The Avengers, Back to the Future, crafted the film's sweeping, emotional score. Genre and cultural context. On the surface, The Croods is a prehistoric adventure comedy. It's bright, loud, funny, and packed with wild creature designs that look like someone fed a biology textbook through a psychedelic blender. There are creatures in this movie that defy every known classification, part bird, part cat, part wolf, and the world they inhabit is simultaneously terrifying and gorgeous. But beneath that surface, The Croods is a family drama. More specifically, it's a story about generational conflict. About the oldest tension in human history, the old way versus the new way. The safety of the known versus the terror and possibility of the unknown. The protective father who loves his family so much that his love starts to suffocate them. And the young daughter who loves her family but is slowly dying inside those cave walls. That's what this movie is really about. And in 2013, that resonated with audiences in a huge way. This was a post-2008 America, a country where people were rebuilding, where an entire generation of young people were questioning the rules they'd inherited, where the tension between security and possibility felt incredibly real. The Croods, dressed up in its prehistoric costume, was speaking directly to that cultural moment. Audience expectations at release. Going into 2013, audiences had big expectations for DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon in 2010 had been a massive critical and commercial hit. Kung Fu Panda 2 in 2011 had proven the studio could do emotionally sophisticated sequels. But DreamWorks had also had some stumbles. Puss in Boots, while profitable, felt a bit hollow, and the studio was still trying to position itself firmly in the same artistic tier as Pixar. The Croods was an original story, not a sequel, not a franchise extension. That's always a risk. And the trailers, while funny, didn't necessarily communicate the depth that the movie actually had. Most audiences went in expecting a fun, goofy caveman comedy. What they got was something that hit considerably harder than anticipated. Section 3, full story breakdown, scene by scene. The opening narration, setting the stage. The movie opens with Eep's voice. And right away, that's a choice. That's a statement. We're not starting with the father's perspective, even though Grug is nominally the protagonist for much of the first act. We're starting with the daughter. Because at its core, this is her story. Eep narrates in a way that's casual, funny, and immediately endearing. She introduces us to her family, the Croods, with the kind of weary, loving exasperation that any teenager with an embarrassing family will immediately recognize. She tells us the rules that govern their lives. Rules handed down by Grug, the patriarch. And what are those rules? Never not be scared. Fear is good. Change is bad. Always follow the rules. And above all else, stay in the cave. This narration works on multiple levels simultaneously. It's giving us world building, establishing that this is a dangerous prehistoric world where death is a daily reality. It's giving us character, showing us Eep's personality through the way she tells the story. And it's immediately establishing the central dramatic conflict, the ideological clash that will drive every single scene that follows. Right from frame 1, we understand what this movie is about. We know what's at stake. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally. The hunt sequence, a masterpiece of animated choreography.
So bright.
The first major set piece of the film is the egg hunt sequence, and oh my goodness, does it deliver. The Crood family launches out of their cave in a coordinated, chaotic, hysterical sequence to retrieve a single egg from a creature that is part bird, part something we don't have a name for. The choreography of this sequence is extraordinary. Every family member has a distinct role, a distinct personality that comes through purely in how they move and what they do. Grug is powerful, decisive, but also slightly panicked. Ugga is calm and competent. Thunk is enthusiastic and completely useless in equal measure. Sandy, the feral toddler, is a chaos agent of terrifying effectiveness. And Gran is ancient and apparently unkillable. But Eep, watch Eep during this sequence. She's physically the most capable of all of them. She's fast, she's agile, she's creative. She outmaneuvers creatures that would stop the rest of the family cold. And yet, after all of that, the egg gets cracked, and they go back to the cave with considerably less food than they need. This sequence does something really clever. It makes you laugh, genuinely laugh, while also, if you're paying attention, making you feel the precariousness of this family's existence. Every day is a struggle. Every meal is a battle. And they're still managing to find joy and humor in it. That's a very human thing. That's something that animation can capture in a way that live action sometimes can't, that emotional truth wrapped in an exaggerated, impossible spectacle. Back to the cave, the prison beneath the love. After the hunt, the family retreats to the cave. And this is where the movie's central conflict crystallizes with real dramatic force. Grug gathers the family for story time. Now, story time in the Crood household is not exactly the warm, creative, imagination-inspiring ritual you might hope for. Grug's stories are all cautionary tales, tales of other prehistoric families who did something different, something new, something curious, and died for it. Every story ends the same way, the curious family gets eaten. Curiosity kills. Newness kills. The unknown kills. Stay safe, stay in the cave, and you'll survive. And here's the thing, he's not wrong. Not entirely. This is a genuinely dangerous world. The danger is real. The creatures outside the cave really will eat you. Grug has kept his entire family alive through sheer force of fearful will when every other family he's ever known has been wiped out. He has the survival receipts. He's not an idiot. He's not a villain. He genuinely believes, with every fiber of his being, that the cave is salvation. But watch Eep during story time. Watch how she sits slightly apart. How she barely reacts to the stories anymore, not because they don't scare her, but because she's heard them 1,000 times and she is so desperately bored, so painfully unfulfilled, that even fear has become monotonous. There's a hollow look in her eyes during these moments that is heartbreaking when you really notice it. The cave is safe. But safety, without freedom, is just a different kind of death. The world begins to change. One night, Eep sees a light. A moving light, outside the cave. And despite everything she's been told, despite every story, every rule, every lesson her father has drilled into her, she follows it. This moment is the inciting incident of the entire film, and the way it's shot is deliberate and gorgeous. The light is warm. It's amber and flickering and alive. And against the cold, dark certainty of the cave, it is irresistible. To Eep, this light is everything she's been denied: curiosity, wonder, the possibility that the world outside the cave might contain things worth seeing rather than just things worth surviving. She follows the light and she finds Guy. Now, Guy. Ryan Reynolds voices this character, and it's a really interesting piece of casting. Reynolds has always had this quality, this easy, reflexive charm that can come across as surface level, and then he'll hit you with something genuine and unexpected underneath it. That's exactly what Guy is. He's charming, he's inventive, he's quick-witted. But there's something underneath the charm. Something careful and sad. And Reynolds conveys that beautifully. Guy has fire. Actual fire. He makes it, he controls it, he uses it as a tool. To Eep, and to the Croods, fire is this terrifying, alien, incredible thing. But Guy treats it casually, like it's just a thing he figured out. And that's the first signal that Guy isn't just a love interest. He's a symbol. He represents the next stage, not just of human development, but of human thinking. But more on that later. Guy tells Eep something that changes everything. The world is ending. The ground is cracking, the mountains are moving, and everything is going to be swallowed up if they don't get to something called tomorrow. Tomorrow, as a concept, as a place, as a direction, is something the Croods have never considered. They live entirely in the present tense. The past is stories. The future is just more of the same, or death. But Guy is talking about something else entirely. He moves on, and Eep, electrified, goes back to the cave. Grug's reaction, the anatomy of protective fear. Grug discovers that Eep left the cave. And his reaction is layered. On the surface, it reads as anger. And his anger is real. But beneath the anger is something far more powerful and far more interesting. Terror. Pure, unfiltered, parental terror. Not terror at Eep, but terror of what could have happened to her. Every nightmare scenario plays out in his mind in the space of a moment. He almost lost her. He almost lost the thing he cares about most. Nicolas Cage's voice performance in this scene is genuinely excellent. Cage has a reputation, obviously, the memes, the wild roles, the operatic intensity that sometimes tips into self-parody. But here, working in animation, stripped of his physical presence, he has to do everything with his voice. And he finds something real. When Grug yells at Eep, it doesn't sound like a villain monologuing. It sounds like a father who is scared out of his mind and has no other vocabulary for it except anger. That's so specifically true. That's such a precise emotional observation. How many people have experienced exactly that, a parent whose love is so large and so frightened that it comes out as rage? Grug doesn't have the emotional tools to say I was terrified of losing you. So instead he says you broke the rules. But we understand. We understand him completely, even as we understand why Eep needs to break free. This moral complexity, the fact that both the father and the daughter are right and wrong simultaneously, is what elevates the Croods from a pleasant animated comedy to something genuinely meaningful. The world literally ends, the earthquake and the exodus. And then the ground opens up. The earthquake sequence in the Croods is one of the most visually spectacular sequences in DreamWorks' entire filmography. The world as the Croods know it, their cave, their hunting grounds, everything familiar, is swallowed up in a cascade of destruction. Mountains collapse. Chasms open. The prehistoric landscape tears itself apart. This forces the Croods out into the open. They have no cave to return to. For the first time in their lives, there is no safety to retreat to. They have to move forward, literally and metaphorically, or die. And here they encounter Guy again. And Grug's reaction to Guy is immediate and visceral. He doesn't like him. He doesn't trust him. Because Guy represents everything Grug is afraid of. Someone who thinks differently, who lives differently, who sees possibilities where Grug only sees dangers. And Guy is young and charismatic, and Deep is looking at him with these wide, fascinated eyes, and Grug can feel something shifting that he cannot control. So what does Grug do? He puts Guy in a log. He carries him along as a reluctant guide, because they need Guy's knowledge of where they're going, while simultaneously keeping him imprisoned, controlled, and at arm's length. It's funny. It's also kind of devastating, because we recognize this pattern. The impulse to contain what we fear rather than try to understand it. The journey begins, a new world unveiled. Here is where the movie really opens up visually, and it is breathtaking. The Croods venture beyond their familiar territory into a landscape that looks like someone combined a coral reef, a jungle, a fever dream, and a Salvador Dali painting. The colors are extraordinary, deep purples and electric blues, luminous pinks and vivid yellows. Creatures exist here that are unlike anything we've ever seen, mashups of different animals that create this sense of a world that is genuinely, excitingly alien. And watching the Croods encounter this world is an absolute delight. Because remember, they've spent their entire lives in a grey cave. This is, for them, something beyond imagination. Every single thing they encounter, every plant, every creature, every phenomenon, is new. And the family responds to this newness in different ways that tell us everything about who they are. Thunk is immediately, completely overwhelmed. He touches everything, gets attached to a creature that's part dog, part something else, and immediately names it Douglas. His sweetness and his simplicity are genuinely charming. Thunk is a character who could have been purely comedic, purely a punching bag, but he has enough warmth and genuine feeling that you root for him. Gran is convinced she's about to die at any moment and seems almost cheerful about it. Cloris Leachman's performance as Gran is one of the underrated comic treasures of this film. She's ancient, she's seen everything, and she has absolutely zero patience for anyone's nonsense. Her relationship with Grug, who she clearly views as an idiot, is a running comedy thread that never stops being funny. Sandy is operating on pure instinct, and she's terrifying. Sandy is essentially a feral toddler who communicates in growls and sprints and the occasional shriek. She is also, somehow, deeply lovable. There's something universally true about a small child who seems to have no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. Ugga, Catherine Keener's performance, is the quiet center of the family. She sees everything. She understands Grug. She understands Eve, and she's caught between them. She's the one who keeps the family from completely falling apart, and she does it not through force or authority but through quiet, steady, almost invisible work. There's a feminist reading of Ugga that I find really compelling, which we'll get into in the themes section. Guy's influence, when the new way starts working. As they travel, Guy begins to demonstrate his value. He shows them how to use fire for warmth and protection. He shows them how to think, how to use what's available in the environment to solve problems, rather than relying purely on brute force and fear. He introduces concepts that are, to the Croods, literally revolutionary. The shoe. The idea of cooking food. The concept of planning ahead. And the Croods take to these ideas with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Eep is electrified. She absorbs everything Guy shows them with a hunger that is almost physical. This is a girl who has been starved of newness her entire life, And now newness is everywhere. The joy Emma Stone puts into Eep's voice during these moments of discovery is infectious. You feel Eep's joy. You feel her coming alive. Thunk loves the dog creature and tries to sit on it, which goes predictably. Gran eats the shoe. Grug watches all of this with a roiling mixture of emotions that Nicolas Cage navigates beautifully: jealousy, fear, admiration he refuses to acknowledge, and a creeping, terrible realization that the world his children are going to grow up in is not the world he knows how to protect them from. The sticky situation, Grug starts to crack. There's a sequence midway through the film, the tar pit sequence, or something approximating it, where the Croods and Guy end up in a situation that requires everyone to work together in new ways. And Grug tries. You can see him try. He reaches for Guy's way of thinking, attempts to problem solve rather than brute force his way through. And when he fails, when his attempt at new thinking doesn't work and Guy has to save the day, the look on Grug's face is really something. It's shame. Genuine shame. The shame of a man who has defined his entire identity around being the protector, the provider, the one who keeps everyone safe, and realizing, slowly and painfully, that the skills that made him great in one world might not be enough in this one. This is where the movie's emotional core really starts to vibrate. Because we're not watching a dumb character fail. We're watching a deeply capable, genuinely loving person confront the limits of what he knows. And that's a much harder thing to watch. Much more uncomfortable. Much more real. The sunrise, one of the most beautiful scenes in animated cinema. There's a scene. There's this scene. Guy takes Eep to watch the sunrise. And this is the first sunrise she has ever seen. She has lived her entire life in a cave or under the cover of darkness, and she has never seen the sun come up over the horizon. The animators go absolutely all out for this sequence. The colors are extraordinary. The sky transitions through deep indigo and violet into rose gold and amber and blinding, beautiful white. And Eep's face watching this, her expression, the animators and Emma Stone together create something that is utterly perfect. It's not just wonder. It's recognition. It's the feeling of seeing something for the first time and realizing, in your bones, that the world is bigger and more beautiful than you were ever told. And then Guy sees her face watching the sunrise, and something shifts in him too. Ryan Reynolds plays this with real subtlety. There's a warmth in Guy's voice in this moment that wasn't there before. He's been charming and useful and clever, but now he's genuinely moved. Not by the sunrise, which he's probably seen before. By Eep seeing it. This is the movie's romantic through line handled with real artistry. There's no awkward, forced declaration. There's just two young people sharing a moment of genuine connection. And it's wonderful. Guy's backstory, the shadow beneath the charm. At some point during the journey, we learn why Guy is alone. Why he has no family. Why he travels light and thinks constantly about tomorrow and never about today. His family didn't make it. He watched them die. He was the only survivor. And his father's last words to him were to find the light, to keep moving, to find tomorrow. That's where the concept of tomorrow comes from for Guy. It's not a philosophy. It's a promise he made to the ghost of his family. It's a grief response. It's the only way he knows how to survive the unsurvivable. This recontextualizes everything about Guy. His easy charm. His relentless focus on moving forward. The fact that he doesn't form attachments easily, except now he is forming one, with the Croods, whether he intends to or not. The way he relates to Grug, with this complicated mixture of condescension and a deep, unacknowledged envy. Because as frustrating as Grug is, Guy watches him with his family and sees what he lost. Sees what he wants. Ryan Reynolds plays the delivery of Guy's backstory very quietly. No big dramatic moment. No swelling music underscoring the pain. Just a quiet admission in the dark. And that restraint makes it land much harder than a more theatrical approach would have. The rift, father versus daughter, comes to a head. The central conflict between Grug and Eep builds and builds throughout the second act until it finally explodes. Grug watches Eep gravitating toward Guy, toward new ideas, toward a different way of being in the world. And his fear metastasizes into something controlling and cruel, not deliberately cruel, but cruel in effect. He tries to isolate Eep. He tries to reassert the old rules. He tells her, in essence, that curiosity will kill her, that her hunger for more is a liability, that the world she wants doesn't exist and she should stop wanting it. And Eep, Emma Stone, delivers this with real fire, lets him have it. She tells Grug that he's not protecting them, he's just preventing them from living. She tells him that if they'd had their way, they'd have spent their whole lives in a cave, too afraid to see anything beautiful, too afraid to feel anything real. And she tells him that she'd rather die curious than live afraid. This fight is raw. It's painful. It's the kind of fight that happens between parents and children who love each other desperately and cannot, in this moment, find each other at all. Both of them are articulating something real. Both of them are right about something. And both of them are breaking each other's hearts. Watch the body language animation in this sequence. The animators make both characters physically smaller after the big confrontation. Both of them retreating inward, wounded. Grug goes off alone, and there's a moment where you see something cross his face, not just hurt, but genuine self-doubt. The first real crack in the wall of his certainty. Grug's night alone, the shadow puppet scene. And now we get to what is, I would argue, one of the most underrated scenes in modern animated cinema. Grug, alone and in pain, starts making shadow puppets on the cave wall using fire, the fire that Guy showed them, the fire that represents everything new and different. And he creates a story. His own story, his own way, a story that's not a cautionary tale, not a this creature did something curious and died story. It's a story about a daughter who is extraordinary. Who is brave and clever and sees things her father can't see. And in the story, the daughter is the hero. And he sits there in the dark, telling this story to no one, creating this little world on the cave wall with his hands and the fire that he didn't want but needed anyway. And tears roll down his face. Animated tears on an animated caveman voiced by Nicolas Cage. And somehow, it's absolutely devastating. This scene works because it reveals the truth of Grug that he cannot say out loud to another person. He knows. He knows Eep is right. He knows she's extraordinary. He knows the world he's been trying to keep her in is too small for her. He knows that his fear, as justified as it is, has become a cage. And he is grieving. Not for her, she's right there, but for the version of him that can't give her what she needs. This is the scene that takes the Croods from good to great. This is the scene that makes this movie matter. The separation, the world tries to swallow them. The world continues its geological apocalypse, and in the chaos and the climbing tension of the third act, the Crood family gets separated. Grug and Eep find themselves cut off from Guy and the rest of the family by a newly opened chasm. And here, something shifts in Grug. The animal instinct, the one that says protect, contain, control, starts to war with something newer and harder to name. Love without fear. The possibility of trusting Eep not just with safety but with freedom. Meanwhile, the rest of the family, with Guy, has to navigate toward the promised land, the place where the light hits, the place they've been moving toward this whole time. And without Grug, they have to rely on each other and on Guy in new ways. Gran steps up. Ugga makes decisions. Even Thunk, bless his heart, contributes meaningfully. The family without Grug is, and this is a narratively bold choice, capable. They're okay. They're more than okay. That's a gut punch for Grug when he realizes it. He's been telling himself, telling everyone, that they need him. That without him, they'll die. And they don't die. They're fine. Which means the protection he's been providing all these years has been, partially, about his own need to be needed, his own fear of being unnecessary. That's a devastating thing to realize. And the movie lets Grug sit in that realization without rushing past it. Grug's redemption, thinking a new thought. Separated from his family, Grug does something unprecedented. He thinks a new thought. He actually innovates. He actually looks at the environment around him and starts problem solving in Guy's manner, using available materials to build something, to create a solution. And what he comes up with is wonderful, and funny, and a little ridiculous, and completely effective. I won't detail every beat of it, but watching Grug discover the joy of invention, watching his face as an idea takes shape and actually works, is one of the movie's great pleasures. He uses the birds. He uses their natural behaviors. He engineers a way to get himself to where his family is going, not by brute force, not by the old ways, but by something new. And he does it with a particular kind of triumph that is very specific. It's the triumph of someone discovering, late, something they should perhaps have known earlier, but the lateness doesn't diminish the joy. It might actually make it sweeter. Nicolas Cage is incredible in this sequence. The physical comedy translates beautifully through his voice, the grunts, the startled sounds, the gleeful barking laugh when something actually works. It's a reminder that Cage, when he's matched with the right material, is a genuinely gifted performer. The final push, everything comes together. The family reunites. The world is still crumbling. The promised land, a place of beauty and color and safety beyond the geological apocalypse, is tantalizingly close. And the final push to get there is a sequence of action, emotion, sacrifice, and redemption that is genuinely thrilling. Grug, in the climax, makes a choice. A choice that is the complete antithesis of every instinct he's had throughout the film. Rather than holding on, rather than retreating to safety, he throws his family forward. He literally hurls them toward the new world, toward tomorrow. Every member of the family gets their moment. Ugga, Gran, Thunk, Sandy, Guy, and Eep. And then Grug is on the wrong side of the chasm. The world is collapsing. And he is separated from everything he loves. This moment works so well because we've spent the whole movie with the idea that the greatest fear is losing your family. For Grug, that fear has driven every decision, every rule, every story. And now his worst fear has happened, but he made it happen deliberately. He chose it. He chose their safety over his own. He chose to let them go. The moment where the family realizes that Grug is not with them, that he didn't make it across, is genuinely, unexpectedly wrenching. Even Gran, who has spent the entire movie treating Grug with barely concealed contempt, is affected. Ugga's reaction is particularly powerful, Catherine Keener putting real, quiet grief into a single sound. Grug's moment of complete transformation, and the big finish. But this is not a tragedy. This is an animated family film with profound emotional intelligence, and it is also a film that believes in second chances and new discoveries. Grug, alone on the wrong side of the world, surrounded by collapsing landscape, does what he's learned to do. He thinks a new thought. He finds the path. He uses everything he's been taught, by Guy, by Eep, by the experience of this extraordinary journey, and he finds a way through. And the way he comes through to the other side is magnificent. It's big and physical and triumphant and funny, and it's exactly the right note for this character. He arrives in the new world transformed, not unrecognizable, not a different person, but expanded. The same Grug who loves his family fiercely, who will do anything to keep them safe, but now with a broader understanding of what safe means. Now understanding that keeping his children safe includes letting them grow. Letting them reach. Letting them live. The family's reunion on the other side is one of those movie moments that, if you've been properly invested, is going to hit you right in the sternum. The Croods embrace each other in the golden light of this new world, this promised land of color and life and possibility. And it's beautiful. Simply, genuinely beautiful. And then the film ends on Eep's narration again, as it began. Completing the circle. She tells us that things changed. That they moved out of the cave. That they started living. And she describes her family, her impossible, chaotic, infuriating, wonderful family, with a warmth that is the warmth of genuine love rather than the performance of it. The Croods didn't just survive. They began. Section 4, Character and Performance Analysis. Eep, the true heart of the film. Let's start where the movie starts, with Eep. Emma Stone was, I think, inspired casting. Stone has this quality in her voice, a brightness, an energy, a playfulness, that makes Eep feel immediately, viscerally alive. But Stone can also go deep. She can find real vulnerability beneath the bravado, real ache beneath the humor. Eep is a teenager, and she is written as a teenager with real psychological specificity. She's not just rebellious teen as a stock character. She has a genuine, textured inner life. Her curiosity isn't petulance or selfishness, it's hunger. She hungers for experience, for meaning, for a world that matches the size of what she feels inside. And Stone communicates that hunger without ever making Eep seem naive or stupid. She understands the dangers of her world. She's just decided that a life of safety isn't really living. Her arc is about learning to want things and also learning to bring her family with her rather than leaving them behind. Early Eep is almost contemptuous of her family's limitations. Late Eep loves them for who they are even while pushing them toward who they could be. That's growth. Real growth. Grug, the most complex character in the film. I would genuinely argue, that Grug Crood is one of the most psychologically complex characters in the history of DreamWorks Animation. And that Nicolas Cage's voice performance is considerably more nuanced than it's typically given credit for. Grug is built from a very specific fear. He has watched everyone he's ever known outside his immediate family die. He is, by any reasonable measure, a survivor of repeated trauma. And his response to that trauma is to build walls, literal and metaphorical walls, to keep what he loves locked inside where nothing can reach it. His arc is not simply overprotective. Dad learns to let go. That would be too easy. His arc is about the difference between love as possession and love as liberation. It's about a man slowly, painfully learning that you cannot love someone into safety. You can only give them the tools to navigate an unsafe world. Cage brings something unexpected to Grug, dignity. Under all the bluster and the fear and the anger, Grug is a dignified character. He takes his responsibilities seriously. He is not stupid. He is constrained by a worldview that was formed in response to genuine suffering. And the moment where that worldview starts to crack, where Grug starts to understand that the world his daughter needs him to live in is larger than the one he knows, Cage makes you feel every increment of that shift. That's not easy. That's real acting. Guy, the catalyst. Guy is an interesting character to analyze because he's less about internal journey and more about catalytic function. He doesn't change as much as he enables change in others. His backstory gives him depth, but his primary dramatic purpose is to represent possibility, to embody the idea that things can be different. Ryan Reynolds plays him with the right amount of charm, keeping Guy likable and warm without making him irritating. The temptation with a character like Guy, the handsome, capable outsider who comes in and shows everyone a better way, is to make him insufferably superior. Reynolds avoids this. Guy is confident but not arrogant. He has knowledge, but he recognizes that the Croods have things he doesn't. Grug's physical capability, the family's loyalty to each other, their collective resilience. Guy observes all of this with genuine admiration that he doesn't always have the emotional vocabulary to express. His relationship with Eep develops beautifully precisely because both characters have real things to offer each other. It doesn't feel like a rescue narrative. It feels like a meeting of equals who see different parts of the world and are better together than apart. The supporting cast, more than comic relief. I want to take a moment to specifically defend Thunk, Gran, Ugga, and even Sandy as characters rather than just comic relief, because the film does more with all of them than it initially seems. Thunk is the character easiest to dismiss as the simple-minded funny one, and yes, he gets a lot of the broad physical comedy. But Clark Duke's performance gives him genuine warmth and sweetness. Thunk's attachment to Douglas the creature dog is played completely straight emotionally. This kid's capacity for love and attachment is presented as a feature, not a bug. In a family so driven by fear, Thunk's ability to immediately, completely love new things is actually kind of extraordinary. Gran is a subversive character in the best way. She's an ancient, surviving matriarch in a world where the film keeps reminding us that survival is the exception, not the rule. The fact that she's still alive, still sharp, still having opinions about everything, it's quietly radical. And her relationship with Grug, while played largely for laughs, has real generational dynamics underneath it. She doesn't respect him because she remembers when he wasn't the patriarch. She has a longer view. And Cloris Leachman plays every moment of it with the ease of a legend who knows exactly what she's doing. Ugga, Catherine Keener's performance, is the most quietly powerful thing in the movie. Ugga sees everything. Every tension, every emotional undercurrent, every need that isn't being articulated. She navigates between Grug and Deep with the exhausting, invisible labor of a woman who holds a family together through sheer emotional intelligence. And there's something the movie does with Ugga in the third act that I want to highlight. She makes a choice. Not Grug's choice, not Deep's choice, her own choice, about what she believes in and who she's following toward tomorrow. And it's a quiet, powerful, feminist moment that the film doesn't announce but simply allows to be. Section 5, Themes, Symbolism and Subtext. Fear as a survival mechanism versus fear as a prison. The central thematic argument of the Croods is about fear. Specifically, about the difference between healthy, protective fear and destructive, limiting fear. Grug's rules, never not be scared, fear is good, are not irrational. In the world of the film, fear has genuine survival value. But the film argues that fear as a way of living, fear as an organizing principle for an entire existence, transforms a survival tool into a cage. This is a remarkably sophisticated philosophical position for a family animated film to take. It doesn't say fear is bad. It says fear is insufficient. You need curiosity too. You need the willingness to step toward the unknown, even when it terrifies you, because the alternative is a kind of death that doesn't announce itself as death. This theme resonates far beyond its prehistoric setting. It speaks to every generation that inherits the fears and rules of the one that came before. Every child who is told this is how we do things and has to decide whether to accept or question that. Every adult who has to decide whether the comfort of the familiar is worth the cost of the unknown. The fire, symbol of knowledge and progress. Fire in the Croods is doing heavy symbolic lifting, and the film is smart enough to let it do that work without underlining it. Fire is knowledge. It's the thing Guy has that the Croods don't. It's warmth, protection, the ability to cook food, and therefore evolve. Light in the darkness. The Croods are initially terrified of fire, they've probably seen it as a destructive force, wildfire, danger. But in Guy's hands, it's a tool. A gift. A technology. When Grug learns to use fire, when he literally takes the fire that represents everything new and uses it to tell his story about Deep, it's enormously symbolic. He is using the tools of the new world to finally express something true. Fire doesn't destroy him. It illuminates him. The cave, safety versus stagnation. The cave is the film's central symbol, and it works on multiple levels. Obviously, it's physical safety, protection from predators, shelter from the elements. But it's also stagnation. It's Plato's cave, almost literally, a place of shadow and story and limited vision, where the inhabitants know only what they've been told rather than what they've experienced. Grug's whole worldview is a cave. It protects, but it also confines. The movie isn't saying we should abandon safety entirely. It's saying the cave can't be the whole world. You have to step out into the light, even if the light is terrifying. Tomorrow, the concept of the future. Guy's concept of tomorrow, the promised land, the place they're heading toward, is philosophically rich. The Croods have no concept of tomorrow in any meaningful sense. They live in survival time, which is always now. The past is lessons. The future is just more now. Guy introduces the idea of planning, of intentionality, of working towards something that doesn't exist yet but that you can move toward. This is, in a very real sense, the invention of hope. And the movie traces the Croods' gradual adoption of this concept, their slow awakening to the possibility that the world can be different tomorrow than it is today. This is arguably the film's most radical idea. Hope as a technology. Hope as something you learn to use rather than something you either have or don't have. Generational trauma and the burden of experience. There's a reading of Grug that I find particularly compelling and that the film supports. He is a man shaped by generational trauma. He's watched families die. He may have watched his own parents die. He has built his entire personality around preventing that from happening again. And he is passing that trauma, those fears, those restrictions, those rules, onto his children. The film gently argues that love without self-awareness can pass pain from one generation to the next. Grug doesn't want to traumatize his children. He loves them. But unexamined fear becomes inherited fear. And Deep's push against the rules is not just teenage rebellion, it's a young person refusing to carry someone else's trauma as her own identity. This is heady stuff for a movie about cartoon cavemen. And yet it's there, embedded in every father-daughter conflict, every rule laid down and broken, every moment of fear masquerading as protection. The New World, America, Progress, and the American Myth. I want to make an observation that might be a bit unexpected. The Croods is, in many ways, a quintessentially American story. The journey westward to a promised land. The clash between old ways and new. The self-made individual, Guy, and the family unit, the Croods, learning from each other. The idea that tomorrow can always be better than today if you're brave enough to move toward it. This doesn't mean the film is uncritical of American mythology, it's not propaganda. But it's drawing on deep cultural wells, telling a story that rhymes with foundational American narratives in ways that probably explain some of its broad appeal. Section 6, Technical and Artistic Review. Animation and Visual Design. The animation in The Croods is extraordinary. The film uses a visual language that is simultaneously lush and grounded. The world looks fantastical, but the physics feel real. Characters have weight. Movement as consequence. The creature design is one of the film's greatest achievements. The designers at DreamWorks were given a genuinely creative brief: design animals that feel prehistoric but not in the boring, historically accurate way. In a what-if evolution took a completely different turn and they delivered magnificently. The saber-toothed tiger cats, the piranha birds, the whales, every creature is a delightful, unsettling mashup that feels like it belongs in this world specifically and nowhere else. The color palette of the film is something to study. The cave world is gray, dark, muted, not unappealing, but limited. The new world the Croods journey through is an explosion of color, deep, saturated, glowing. Every time the film introduces a new environment, it feels like the visual world is breathing deeper. The animators are using color not just aesthetically but narratively. Color is freedom, color is possibility, color is life. Direction, Sanders and DeMicco's choices. Chris Sanders' influence is strongly felt in the film's emotional intelligence. Sanders has a specific gift for grounding fantastical stories in genuine family feeling, and The Croods shows that gift operating at full power. The quiet moments, the shadow puppet scene, the sunrise, Guy's backstory, are handled with restraint that shows real directorial confidence. These filmmakers trust that the audience will feel what the scene contains without being told explicitly how to feel. DeMicco brings strong structural clarity to a plot that, by nature, wants to sprawl. The film's pacing is genuinely impressive. It moves fast enough to maintain energy but slow enough to let the emotional beats breathe. That's a hard balance to strike, especially in a movie that's simultaneously an action comedy and a family drama. Alan Silvestri's score, the emotional architecture. Alan Silvestri's score for The Croods is something I want to spend real time on, because it's doing incredible work that often goes unnoticed. Silvestri is a master of the emotional swell. Nobody builds a musical moment to a cathartic peak quite like he does. And The Croods gives him rich material. The main theme has this striving, percussive quality, primitive and propulsive simultaneously, that perfectly captures the film's energy. When the action sequences kick in, the score is wild and rhythmic and exciting. But when the film slows down for its emotional moments, Silvestri shifts to something much more intimate, smaller arrangements, warmer tones, melodies that feel like they're being hummed rather than performed. The shadow puppet scene's musical accompaniment is particularly beautiful. It's gentle and slightly melancholic and has this quality of looking backward and forward at the same time, which is exactly what Grug is doing in that moment. Sound design. The sound design by Randy Tom is exceptional. This is a world where sound needs to feel simultaneously primitive and alive, where footsteps and roars and the crack of the earth communicate physical reality. Tom creates a soundscape that feels genuinely prehistoric without ever feeling dead or empty. The world sounds like it's breathing. Particularly effective is the sound design during the geological disaster sequences, the deep rumble of the earth shifting, the crack and collapse of rock formations. These sounds have a visceral, physical quality that makes your seat feel like it's shaking even when it isn't. Standout scenes, technical achievements. Several scenes deserve special mention for their technical achievement. The opening hunt sequence is an extraordinary piece of animated choreography, dozens of moving parts, multiple characters, a moving camera, and comic timing that has to be frame perfect to work. The sunrise sequence is the film's quietest technical achievement. It's essentially two characters reacting to a light effect, and the entirety of the scene's emotional impact comes from the subtlety of the character animation. Deep's face during that sequence shows the full range of an animated performance at its best. The final action sequence, the race to the promised land, Grug's sacrifice, the family's crossing, is the film's most technically complex sequence and a genuine piece of animated filmmaking. Multiple characters, multiple threat levels, emotional stakes layered with physical stakes, humor and fear and love and triumph all happening simultaneously. Section 7, Critical Review and Comparisons. Strengths. Let me be clear about what this film does extraordinarily well, because it does quite a lot extraordinarily well. The emotional core of the Croods is its greatest strength. The father-daughter relationship between Grug and Deep is one of the most richly written parent-child relationships in animated film history. It doesn't take the easy road of making Grug a villain or making Deep simply right. Both characters are fully human, fully sympathetic and fully flawed, and their conflict feels true even in its prehistoric exaggeration. The world building is another massive strength. The creature designs, the environmental design, the color language. This is a film that created a complete, vivid, internally consistent world. You could spend hours in this universe and not exhaust its possibilities. The comedy works. This sounds obvious, but it's worth saying, not every animated film that's supposed to be funny actually is. The Croods is genuinely, consistently funny, and importantly, its comedy arises from character rather than from joke-telling. The funniest moments are funny because we know these people, their specific rhythms, their particular blind spots, and the comedy emerges naturally from who they are. The voice performances, across the board, are excellent. Nicolas Cage is a genuinely inspired choice for Grug, bringing an unexpected vulnerability and dignity to a character that could have been broad and cartoonish. Emma Stone gives Deep real substance. Ryan Reynolds threads the difficult needle of making Guy charming without making him insufferable. Weaknesses. No review worth its salt ignores the weaknesses, so let's be honest. The film's second act can feel slightly episodic. The journey structure means that certain sequences, while fun in isolation, don't always connect as smoothly to the larger narrative as they might. There are moments where it feels like you're watching a series of set pieces rather than a coherent story progressing with necessity. Guy's character, despite Reynolds' best efforts, is slightly underdeveloped in comparison to Eep and Grug. His backstory is moving but slightly rushed. You feel like there's more to explore with Guy than the film has time for, more depth to unpack, more vulnerability to show. The sequel actually does more with him in some ways, but within the confines of this film, he occasionally feels more like a plot function than a fully realized person. The film's thematic argument, while sophisticated, occasionally gets stated too directly, particularly in the dialogue between Grug and Deep during their major confrontation. The movie tells us what it's about when it might have trusted us to feel it without the explicit articulation. Comparisons. Where does it sit in the canon? How does The Croods compare to its animated contemporaries and predecessors? The comparison that comes up most often, and most naturally, is How to Train Your Dragon. Both are DreamWorks films. Both center on a father-child relationship strained by generational difference. Both feature a young protagonist who sees the world differently from their elders. Both, ultimately, argue for connection over conflict, curiosity over fear. But How to Train Your Dragon is, I think most people would agree, the stronger film, primarily because its protagonist's arc is more tightly integrated with the plot. Hiccup's personal journey and the plot's external events are inseparable. In the Croods, Eep's journey and the film's external catastrophe are more loosely connected. The geological apocalypse that drives the plot doesn't have the same thematic weight as the Viking-dragon conflict in Dragon.
So bright.
Compared to Pixar's family dramas, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Inside Out, The Croods holds up better than you might expect. It doesn't have Pixar's structural precision, but it has genuine emotional depth that many Pixar imitators fail to achieve. The shadow puppet scene, in particular, is a piece of emotional filmmaking that would not embarrass itself in any company. Compared to other family on a journey animated films, The Road to El Dorado, Quest for Camelot, even Disney's Dinosaur, The Croods is simply more emotionally sophisticated. It has a richer cast of characters and a cleaner thematic argument than most of its genre siblings. The interesting comparison, actually, is to Ice Age. Both are prehistoric family adventure comedies released in the same general era. Both feature unlikely family groups navigating a changing world. Both use the backdrop of geological catastrophe as a narrative engine. But The Croods is the more emotionally intelligent film by a significant margin. Ice Age is warmer and funnier but thinner, while The Croods commits to genuine feeling in a way that Ice Age mostly avoids. The Pixar comparison and what it reveals. There's always this tendency to evaluate non-Pixar animated films against the Pixar standard, and I want to push back on that a little, while also engaging with it honestly. Yes, The Croods is not Wall-E. It's not Up. It doesn't take the structural risks that Pixar's best films take, doesn't push its formal elements to the same extremes. But it's also doing something that Pixar rarely does. It's centering a father-daughter relationship between two equally weighted characters where both are right and both are wrong and neither is purely the hero or the obstacle. Pixar's family dynamics tend to privilege one perspective. The Croods genuinely splits the dramatic weight between Grug and Eep in a way that's unusual and valuable. Section 8, Final Verdict and Ending. What the movie is really saying. After all of this, after the wild creature designs and the explosive set pieces and the comedy and the emotional gut punches, what is The Croods really saying? It's saying that love is not enough on its own. That love without wisdom becomes control. That protection without permission becomes imprisonment. That the greatest act of love a parent can perform is not keeping a child safe. It's giving them the tools and the space to find safety for themselves. To encounter danger, and survive it, and grow from it. It's saying that fear is information but not instruction. That you can acknowledge what frightens you without being governed by it. That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. It's saying that every generation must find its own way, must discover its own world, must build its own understanding of what survival means, and that this is not a betrayal of those who came before, but an honoring of them. The Croods' survival to that point, in that cave, made it possible for them to venture out of it. Grug's fear kept them alive long enough for Eep's curiosity to lead them forward. It's saying, simply and profoundly, tomorrow is worth moving toward. Who this movie is for. The Croods works on multiple levels for multiple audiences, which is one of its great achievements. For kids, it's a wild, colorful, funny adventure with creatures they've never seen and a family they recognize even in their most exaggerated prehistoric form. For teenagers, it's validation, the affirmation that the hunger for more, the refusal to accept that the world is only as big as you've been told, is not selfishness but vitality. Eep is a teenager worth looking up to. For parents, and particularly for fathers, this movie is something else entirely. This movie is a reckoning. Grug's journey is the journey of a parent realizing that their deepest fear has become their child's greatest obstacle. That the love intended to protect has become the thing that constrains. If you have kids, and you watch this movie honestly, certain scenes are going to hit you in places you didn't expect. For anyone who has ever felt trapped by someone else's fear, by inherited rules, by received wisdom, by the logic of the cave, this movie is an anthem. It's a story about stepping outside, even when your legs are shaking. It's a story about following the light, even when everything you've been told says the dark is safer. The legacy and the missed appreciation. The Croods grossed $587 million worldwide. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. It spawned a successful sequel. By any commercial measure, it was a massive success. And yet it exists in a strange cultural twilight, widely seen, warmly remembered, but rarely cited as one of the animated greats. I think part of this is the caveman setting, which maybe made it seem sillier than it is. Part of it is the competition. 2013 was a remarkable year for animated film, with Frozen dominating the cultural conversation in a way that left little room for anything else. Part of it is the DreamWorks stigma, the sense that DreamWorks makes enjoyable but not transcendent animated cinema. But I've made my case. I've walked you through this movie from scene to scene, theme to theme, performance to performance. And I hope what I have shown is that The Croods is not just a pleasant family movie. It's a genuine piece of emotionally intelligent filmmaking. It's a movie with real things to say about real human experiences, dressed up in prehistoric clothing and delivered with wit, heart, and genuine visual splendor. Final rating. Alright. The moment you've been waiting for. My final rating for The Croods is an 8.5 out of 10. Here is my breakdown. Story and emotional depth, 9/10. The father-daughter dynamic is one of the most authentically written parent-child relationships in animated cinema. The thematic argument is sophisticated, and the emotional payoffs are genuinely earned. Animation and visual design, 9/10. The world building is extraordinary. The creature designs are inventive and delightful. The color language is used with real skill. Silvestri's score is excellent. Characters and performances, 8/10. Grug and Deep are outstanding. Guy, Ugga, Gran, and Thunk are strong supporting characters. The slight underdevelopment of Guy in particular keeps this from a perfect score. Pacing and structure, 8/10. The film moves well overall, but the episodic quality of the second act is a genuine weakness. The first and third acts are tighter and more compelling than the middle. Originality and ambition, 9/10. For a studio picture, this film is remarkably willing to sit in moral complexity, to resist easy answers, and to trust its audience with genuine emotional difficulty. That gives us an average that rounds to 8.5, and I feel confident defending every decimal point of it. Closing thoughts. The Croods is a movie about stepping outside. About the first moment you realize that the rules you were given were written by people who were afraid, and that fear, however understandable, is not a good enough reason to stop moving forward. It's a movie about the terrifying, exhilarating, life-changing act of following a light you don't understand toward a tomorrow you can't see. It's about a family that argues and loves and drives each other crazy and would do absolutely anything for each other. It's about a father who loves his daughter so much that he eventually learns to love her freedom too. And it's wrapped in the most spectacular prehistoric visuals DreamWorks has ever produced, with a voice cast at the top of their game, a score that makes you feel things you weren't ready to feel, and a sense of humor that never once undercuts the genuine emotion underneath it. This is not a movie you should watch once as a kid and forget. This is a movie you should watch again, as a parent, as a child who has grown up, as someone who has ever felt too afraid to step outside a cave of their own making. Watch it again and see what you missed. See what I've been talking about this whole time. Because trust me, the first time through, you were probably laughing at the cavemen. The second time through, you're going to be crying with them. And you're not going to be entirely sure, by the end, which experience was more meaningful. The Croods, 8.5 out of 10. An animated masterpiece that deserves more recognition than it gets, more conversation than it receives, and considerably more love than the culture has given it so far. That's all from me today. If you made it this far, thank you. Genuinely. This was a labor of love, and I hope it showed. If this video made you want to rewatch The Croods, good. Go do it. Turn the lights down, make some food, and let this movie do what it does best. And remember, never not be curious. Until next time, I'll see you on the other side.
Hold on tight. We're almost there. Be careful with her.
I'm okay, Dad.
I hope so. Go now! I'll find another way! You can make it! Be brave! This canyon is impossible.
We have to find a way.
It's too big.
Faster! The ground is collapsing!
I'm trying! Watch the fissures! It's too fast!
Almost there! Keep going! It's collapsing.
The sky is on fire.
It's so big.
We have to go. Careful now. It's so bright.
Wow, look! Whoa, look at it go!
Don't let it get away!
It's so colorful! We're gaining on it!
In a world of danger, Grug's family has one rule: never leave the cave. But Eep dreams of the world outside.
Hold on tight. We're almost there. Be careful with her.
I'm okay, Dad.
I hope so. Go now! I'll find another way! You can make it! Be brave! This canyon is impossible.
We have to find a way. It's too big.
Faster! The ground is collapsing!
I'm trying! Watch the fissures! It's too fast!
Almost there! Keep going! It's collapsing.
The sky is on fire. It's so big.
We have to go. Careful now. It's so bright.
Wow, look! Whoa, look at it go!
Don't let it get away!
It's so colorful! We're gaining on it!
In a world of danger, Grug's family has one rule: never leave the cave. But Eep dreams of the world outside.